this is really about creating space for new beginnings. Like we can say we want to be more efficient or more optimal or happier or whatever it is, but this year-end time is time to reflect. What do we want to do going forward? Who do we want to be? How do we want to feel? All the things around that. I love thinking about like, how do I want to reinvent myself, recreate myself, and what do I need to stop? So I want to dive in because I think a lot about goal setting. This could be the fact that I might be a little ADHD and I love bright, shiny objects, but I love thinking about like, how do I want to reinvent myself, recreate myself, and what do I need to stop? Yes, I have learned that you can't do it all, or at least not at the same time. But what do I want to stop? What loops do I want to close? And really, how do I intentionally want to start a new chapter? As I look back for myself over the last year, it's been quite a year. I went into a really quiet period. Well, I would say from February until August, but really, I'm still in a way in it, or at least I think to the outside world I am. I've been very absent from social media, but that does not mean I have not been incredibly all in on my own life. So the last 6 months, I realized we moved to Carmel almost exactly 6 months ago, the 1st of June or the last day of May. It really created this opportunity logistically, geographically, emotionally, in all of the ways to step back from old routines and to really reset my life, my identities, my priorities. If you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're feeling stuck, you want clarity in your own life and your business, in any part of it, this episode is for you. But I'll start with the story of Carmel, right? And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while or following me on social, you have probably seen or heard my love affair with the magical little village of Carmel by the sea, or the whole really Monterey Bay area. This started when my husband and I were dating 14 years ago, and he took me to Carmel. I think it was like the weekend after Thanksgiving when we just started off our long distance vacation trip. We had dated in person for about 9 months, eight months. And he moved up to NorCal and we decided we were going to start doing this long distance relationship, which I said, no, it's going to be a long distance vacation trip because we're going to have so much fun. And we did. It's a whole nother episode. I have loved it for years. And what I couldn't tell is, do I love it because it is magical and it's like a little European village and there's no street lights? It's just incredible. If you haven't been there, it should be on your list, and then shoot me a DM and ask me for my list of all the favorite places. What I noticed every time we visited is I felt just so at home. My nervous system was super happy. My Oura ring, my Whoop strap would tell me that. I got the best sleep ever. I just felt like the best version of myself, right? Vacation Rebecca. And I started to wonder, I'm like, is this because I'm on vacation, even though, we have a second home down there, so I still did laundry and the things? Or is it because there's something really special about this place? And I told my husband probably about 2 years ago, I'm like, I just love Carmel and I'd really like to experience living there, but I really don't want to wait till we retire. Right? It's a big retiree spot. We kind of talked about this opportunity and this decision and decided we try it out for the summer. And again, if you probably heard the first episode that I kicked off season 7, like we're in Carmel, we decided to stay there. And I cried the first 4 days I was there in gratitude, but I digress. The biggest part of the decision was this decision to simplify our lifestyle. And when we looked at the reasons for moving there, I was like prioritizing time outside. I really wanted a restart. I wanted a slow living change. And I would like to say that you should be able to do that wherever you are, but environment is often stronger than we are. I was having a really hard time, ironically, as I'm sitting here in Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley, like Zuckerberg lives a mile away and Facebook and Google, and like it's really the tech center. And this place like emanates energy. It is a get shit done place. And it has been a place that I have done that and my husband has done that. And that's great if you're in that season. But I was having an incredibly challenging time, even with all of the tools, being in a not GSD energy as a mom and as a wife and prioritizing things. And the things that I knew I felt that I wanted to prioritize, but my mind was often not aligning with the way that my heart felt. And so I knew that move would logistically change things. And it gave me a beautiful opportunity to restart. You don't have to move your family, your school, etc. to do this, okay? So, I had the opportunity, I took advantage of it, right? Why not? But this can be something that you do every year, every quarter. You can go download my CPR, which if you go to my Instagram, it's typically there, but it's creativity, play, and restoration. Actually, it's called the Balance Blueprint. And you can download that in the show notes. And that is a great tool for any time you want to have an evolution of yourself, every time you want to clear things out, every time you want to be really intentional about what is taking up your time, your energy, your schedule, all of that. But I'm like a girl that likes to cold plunge. I went all in. I like to sometimes be a little extreme. And it was partly because I didn't want to dip a toe in. I wanted to make a complete change in my life, a complete change to my identity. And I knew that if I just said, oh, I'm going to, stay where I'm at, but I'm going to make some changes, it would be really easy to fall back in. So I would say, however you want to do this, I know habit experts will say, let's start with little things, but sometimes you need a big change for a pattern interrupt. It's like why Marie Kondo doesn't say, do a room a month. She's like, do this in 3 days and make it a complete change and don't go back. So when you're thinking about this, when you're thinking about breaking old routines in order to have this space to become, the new version of you, that requires an intentional decision. For me, that was going from a really high level of support. And I always want to be really transparent about this because I think that sometimes people are like, Rebecca, how do you get all of these things done? And I'm like, oh, with a lot of help. I mean, personally, professionally, emotionally, my life, I'd say 3 to 5 years ago, looked like having an au pair that lived in and a full-time nanny. And that doesn't mean I'm not or wasn't a really present mom, but I was operating as a solo parent. My husband was, doing a startup and sold it during that time in order to keep scaling my business and keep up with 2 very small children and a 6,000 square foot house and all of the obligations and things that I had, chosen for myself, even though they ended up making me practically feeling a little out of control. It required a high level of support. And that level of support, by the way, was not inexpensive, which required me and my husband to work really hard. And it was like this chicken and egg. What created what? I don't know. But I made this decision. I was like, I want to get rid of everything. This is not about being more efficient, but I need to know what level of support do I actually need. I didn't do laundry for a couple of years, and that is a luxury that you could told 15-year-old me, I would have said that's not even possible. Now I do 95% of my laundry. 5% is if a babysitter decides to turn over a load on the 1 or 2 nights that, we do a date night. I decided to get rid of all of that support so I could get really clear on what level of being present do I want? Not obviously with my children and my husband being first and my dog, but also even in my own home. And obviously going from a 6,000 square foot home to a 1,400 square foot home made it much easier. And my daughter starting kindergarten and having 5.5 hours a day of school, those things made it easier. But what it did for me is it allowed me to reset around being fully present. That I have seen has built my children's ability to be resilient, resourceful, more emotionally balanced. I had great care. It changed so much in our relationships. And it's interesting now because we still come back to Palo Alto as our joke. Our first home became our vacation home or our primary. But I even noticed when we're back here, even though I'm still, fully present, fully in mom mode, there's a different energy. And my kids are like, when are we going to have a play date? Or when are we going to do this? They're very in do. Where in Carmel, they're very in be. It's like, let's get out art. Let's get out, books and just be really cozy. And that has created less time for work, which has created what? More focus in the hours that I have, which is a lot less, more clarity on what am I going to focus my limited time, energy towards? What are the things that are absolutely a must, right? I have a friend that said, if you're juggling balls, you really need to know which ones are glass and which ones are plastic. And what this time gave me is the ability to understand which of my balls that I was juggling, because I was juggling a lot and I was sometimes dropping the glass ones. And I don't do that anymore or not very often. As we go into the season, and again, this is whenever you're listening, because I hope that you're listening to this not just in December or early January, but you're listening to this whenever you're craving a change. And part of that, for many years, I was like, let's just redesign my life in 30 minutes and replan it out. And listen, there's a frenetic dopamine energy to doing that. And I'm not saying it's better than just sitting being miserable. But sometimes I didn't really sit down and feel into what do I actually want? Not just what is a good idea, what is a bright, shiny object. And so as I got quiet to get that clarity, I stopped advertising, selling my business. Now, the beautiful thing is I have built unbelievable referral and relationships and power partners. So business continued to come in. But I got really clear on what really moves the needle, what doesn't. And as someone who sometimes some people call me the queen of visibility, and that's not just PR, that's all kinds of visibility. I got really visible to my very core priorities, which is my family, my friends, I'd say my team, my power partners. But I let go of obligations so that I could really understand what really excites me, what feels like an obligation. And I started focusing just on the most intimate I'd say inner circle of my time and my attention. And that for me is my mastermind, the inner circle. It's like, they say like your business baby, because I love the intensity of one-to-one, but I love also creating a group atmosphere where people get far more than I could give them themselves, even if I am like the best coach in the world or the best mentor in the world for them. And the other is live events. So in that time, I got really quiet. I came back for a weekend at the Pitch Club in September, and I'm like, I will tell you, again, this does not align with my current state. If my kids were in college or, on their own, I could almost do Tony Robbins' schedule. Maybe not the exact schedule, but I could do a live events 100 days a year. It is so recharging and refueling. And it is where, I love it unlike anything else. That's my intensity is in, as my dear friend Tracy O'Malley says, it's like creating experiences and community. And that's what live events are. It's creating experiences and community. And it's that intensity. Or I heard someone else say it's making friends and having fun. And that's also what I love to do. That's the highest expression of myself. So this time, this getting quiet really let me go of the tasks, the obligations that didn't align with the highest expression of me. Okay, you're like, okay, that sounds great, Rebecca. I'm really glad you're living your best life. And, yes, I will say always in hindsight, what they say, hindsight's 2020. Now that means something very different. It always looks way easier after. This required 6 months of the dark night of the soul. And normally I would bypass the heck out of that and use all my tools like breathwork, like aligned action. And I purposely really kind of sat in it, which again, Enneagram 7 here, I don't like to do that. I don't enjoy emotional pain. In fact, I run from it. But I did that. I sat in it. I sat in the discomfort so that I could, what I say, you get forged by fire. But this was not a fast fire. This was like a slow burning fire. But I want to give you some practical tools because my goal is not to have you sit in it for the next 6 months. It's to use, maybe it's a few days, maybe it's a week. But the whole point is don't bypass into this next chapter, into this next evolution. So how do you reset? Some of the practical tools, right, is your calendar. I literally over here, I have this thing. It's called the Big AXX calendar. It's not Axe, Big Ass calendar, 2025. And it's like, I'm putting everything out there. Right? I love utilizing a calendar. And by the way, planning in intentional resets or planning in those intentional times to like review, how are things working? You can do that daily in 10 minutes of like, how productive was I today? What do I need to do tomorrow differently? Weekly, monthly, quarterly. And again, I give a lot of those tools in the Balance Blueprint if you haven't already. One is by the way, clearing space or creating space and closing loops. I feel like this is my theme for 2024 or 25. A big part of that is getting rid of the noise. This is great to do after a Black Friday because you see every business you've ever bought something from. It's like unsubscribe to everything, right? I use unroll.me or Maelstrom, and now Google obviously has some great solo unsubscribed. Like get rid of things. You can literally start auditing what is and isn't working. I went through my phone and I'm like, what apps do I have that I haven't used? And whether you're paying for them or not, it's taking mental bandwidth. Even if it's just I had this app that someone referred me to that they said is great for X, Y, and Z, and I've had it for 3 years and I've never used it. Like get rid of it or commit some time to using it and figuring it out. I always love when I lose a credit card. It doesn't happen that often, or when my credit card expires and I need to replace it with a new card. It's like you figure out, oh my gosh, I forgot or didn't realize I was paying for all of these little things that every month, I do that audit. I'm like, oh my God, there's $500 a month of stuff I can get rid of. Subscriptions or things I didn't even realize I was paying for. That's what you should do with your entire life is just do this review and look through what isn't serving me. Subscriptions, old commitments, time sacks, like clothes in your closet, all of the things. You don't, by the way, have to wait for a new year, a new month, or a Monday to do this. I often do it when something breaks in my life and I'm like, not again. So the other part about closing loops, I am a big believer in closing things down before you start something new. And I've learned that the hard way, be like, let's add on some things. Let's make new goals while I still was living my existing life. And of course, what happens is you start with the best intentions, then you go into massive overwhelm and everything crashes and burns. And you typically take, 1 step forward and 3 steps back. So finishing unresolved tasks, eliminating the mental clutter, like catching up on the emails, delegating, unsubscribing, whatever you need to do. But by the way, that stuff takes time. So plan it in, get accountability, get a co-work session, but clearing those loops, create the mental and emotional space for the new beginnings. That's what we all want, right? A new beginning isn't, by the way, about starting everything fresh. It's really about being intentional about what is this next version of myself? And it might be 5% different. It might be 10% different. And by the way, different doesn't mean you need to change everything. Like I have always loved creativity, dance. I just wasn't giving myself space to do those things. And so as part of this move to Carmel, one of the things that I am doing is dance. I signed up for a 10-week burlesque class. We just had our showcase a week ago, and it was one of the most fun, supportive, body positive, creative things ever. I told my instructor like 3 weeks in, our teacher, I was like, I'm already buying costumes for the next showcase that you haven't even announced. That's not even for probably another 6 months. Like, you got me for life. I love it. That could be a whole other episode, is like creating the space to be able to actually tap into the things that fuel you emotionally, physically, financially, but often creating that space requires getting rid of the things that don't. And that's not just rid of the things that don't work. It might be just getting rid of things that are no longer part of who you are. So if you're waiting for permission to do that, here it is. I am handing you your permission slip, but reflect on this in whatever way it makes sense. If you need to go walk and journal, if you need to talk it out, if you're a verbal processor, do breath work on it, meditate, whatever it is. And you could do all of those things, but just reflect on, what are you ready to let go of? What are you ready to close out to create the clarity and the space for something new? And so that you go into that something new feeling really aligned in it. And it all starts with the first step. You don't have to recreate your entire life. And though I love doing that, but audit those commitments, try one small reset. Maybe it's this week you're going to focus on your sleep, so you're going to feel rested so you can make the best decisions, or your movement, or this week you're going to catch up with a old friend that you haven't talked to in a while, but you're going to do that by deleting Netflix off your phone so you don't stay up too late, and then you're tired the next morning and don't have the time for it, which, by the way, talking to myself, I just so encourage you that you can have that reset, restart anytime you want. All it requires is getting really honest with what you want and what part of your life, by the way, the things that you've chosen are no longer serving that, and just taking the opportunity to literally hit the reset button.